Hello, everybody. Here we are live. Come on in. I'm pulling up the chat. Say hi if you're here live. I have a funny story to tell you while we get going here. And I want to make sure I have my chat pulled up on LinkedIn too. So it's a beautiful day here in New York State. And so I took my dog out for a walk in the yard, and we have this huge yard in the woods, so we let him run free. Not to worry, he's safe, except for sometimes getting into animals. Now, little known fact, or probably widely known, if you know about foxes, and we have a lot of foxes in our woods, foxes will like kill more than they can eat in a given sitting, and then they'll like bury the rest and come back to it later, right? It's just like having resources, right? Your reserves, your nonprofit. So foxes, if they can, keep some reserves buried in the woods. So my dog comes running out of the woods with something exciting in his mouth. And I go take a close look, and it's like a foot and a leg. And I think it's maybe a raccoon leg. Hard to tell exactly. I guess it could, I don't think it's a skunk. Anyway, so I decided I'd walk back in the woods to see like if there's a rest of the body. Well, I did not find the body, but I found the fur from like some other animal. I found a deer leg and a fish, most of which the deer leg my dog had not dug up. It was like sitting at the edge of a foxhole as though the fox like had tried to pull it in. It was gruesome. Anyway, you probably didn't need to know that. It's on my mind, so I thought I would share. Let's dive in to today's topic. Today we're talking about who decides what and how to fix decision-making confusion in your organization. So let me ask you a question. Are projects stalling because your team isn't sure who has the authority to make decisions? You get like, I thought it was your job, or I thought it was your job, or I didn't go because I wasn't sure if I should go do that thing. Or maybe you are dealing with waiting for your board to make a decision, right? Like you know what to do, but you feel like your board needs to weigh in and be involved in that decision, and that's happening slowly. Or maybe there's some confusion. Maybe you're a board member wondering like, do we really need to be making this decision? Or maybe you're thinking we should be making this decision, but our CEO seems to be, there's some tension there about who between the board and the CEO or the leadership team, right? I like to think some nonprofits, their entire leadership team is their CEO, often called an executive director. Other times they have a leadership team involved, like a C-suite kind of thing. Anyway, stick with me for the next few minutes, and I'm going to high level give you a way to break down how to clarify decision making, which is really important because when you don't have clarity around decision making, it leads to frustration and delays. Delays means slowness. Slowness is, say it with me, expensive. Slowness is expensive, and slowness, if your programs offer like critical supports to people or animals, if your programs are kind of somewhat life and death for people, or like housing security, food security, physical health, mental health, any of those things, slowness is not only expensive for you, it is suffering for your clients, right? So we don't want to be slow in the nonprofit space ever, because it delivers the double whammy of being expensive and hurtful to our clients. So if we're unnecessarily slow, then we are hurting our clients unnecessarily. And we are not here to cause more suffering in this world. We are here to reduce suffering in this world. So, okay, let's talk about a few key things. Let's talk about the board first, all right? So I have a whole board training, or you can go into this in depth, and I deliver that in the Board Clarity Club, which is a very inexpensive monthly subscription where you get access to training for your board and live Q&A calls with me, with your board every month. But in that training, I have a decision-making guide for nonprofit boards to really clarify which types of decisions boards should be making and which types of decisions the CEO and leadership team and everyone who's involved with decision making in the nonprofit staff, okay? And it's really, really, really simple. Boards should be making decisions around board organization and leadership. So like voting for officers, things like that. You might have a membership structure that prescribes, a process for that that's slightly different, but that's okay. Boards should be making decisions to stop any activity that is illegal, grossly negligent, or really unethical, right? So that isn't already being addressed, right? So if it's being thoroughly addressed by the leadership, that's fine. But if it's not being addressed, boards should make the stop decision. That's an emergency brake stop. That means it's a stop only. It doesn't mean the board takes over and starts making all the decisions about what to do instead. So board decisions around board organization, stop decisions around anything that they discover is illegal, unethical, or grossly negligent. Decisions that the leadership team ask them to partner on, right? So typically, if there is a difficult, risky decision to be made, the leadership team will come to the board and say, we'd like you to make this decision with us and carry the risk with us, right? And then decisions that ensure, the fourth type is decisions that ensure that you have capable leadership in place, which typically means either hiring a CEO directly, confirming that they're qualified, making sure that they have adequate compensations and supports, or letting an executive director / CEO go if needed. Okay, so those are the only 4 types of decisions I recommend boards make, and it greatly simplifies who's deciding what between the board and the staff. Again, I go into that in way more detail in another training. You can go to pivotground.com/board clarity. Let me make sure I put, it's not board, it might be board dash clarity. Let me just, it's board dash clarity if you want to sign up and see those trainings. All right. Next up is making decisions. Who should be making decisions and how can we streamline decision making at the organization level? So first off, I advise all of my clients to create a set of guiding principles. These are similar to core values, but values are a little challenging to actually turn into action because values are usually a mix of beliefs and choices about behavior. And guiding principles are really kind of predetermined choices about behavior that everyone buys into. So for example, client I'm working with now, one of their guiding principles we're calling the out in the field principle, which has to do with if we don't have the information we need, we go out into the field, conduct the research ourselves if we need to, and we find the answers, right? So when you have a set of guiding principles for all behavior, for all staff, it shortcuts the decision-making process. So if I work for this organization with the out in the field guiding principle, and that's just one of 7 guiding principles, when I ask myself, hey, I don't know, what's going on in one of these programs, I'm the fundraiser and I need to collect some stories. Should I go ask my supervisor if it's okay if I go for a visit? Or should I just assume that's okay and coordinate with whoever, is running the program and go get the information? Because of the guiding out in the field guiding principle, I don't need to go ask anybody. That is the way we do things. And it empowers me to it's kind of like a decision that's been pre-made for everybody for them. Another example of a guiding principle and how that's kind of a pre-made decision is that everybody should be heard and have, and feel like they were heard. That's a guiding principle that I have in my own organization. So if ever I'm like, oh, should I give somebody an opportunity to communicate or express what's going on for them? The answer is yes, right? We listen to people and we make sure they feel heard, right? So we're always going to take those actions to make people feel heard. And then, what we do with that information afterwards is a different story, but we know we're always going to operate in that way. All right. So that is one of the first things I recommend is you create a set of guiding principles that kind of predetermines a whole bunch of decisions for your entire staff so they don't need to go get permission. They know that's the way you do things. I'll give you one more example. I know we're going over time a bit today, but I love this one from a for-profit business that I came in contact with once. And it was, if it's not a hell yeah, it's a no, right? And that covered a lot of decisions. Basically says, if we're not like 100% or 110% like yes, then we don't do it, right? We're not like, oh, it's so, it's kind of good. Let's go ahead and do it. No, we only do what's 100% or more a yes. And that was, I think, a really powerful guiding principle. Okay, next thing that helps clarify decisions is to think about what are the functions of your nonprofit and what are the key outcomes that each function is responsible for. And I'll give you the cheat sheet right now. I'll tell you what they are because they're basically the same for every nonprofit. So high level, the functions and outcomes are making sure we're going in the right direction, figuring out like that we are going in the best future steps possible. The next outcome that we could be thinking about is, are we operating at the optimum speed and capacity, right? Are we moving the right speed for the resources we have? And if we need to go faster with more resources, how are we getting those resources, right? Then we have some outcomes around ensuring specifically that we are maximizing our resources around having the right team, about having the right physical facilities and equipment, having the right digital tools and equipment, and using our money wisely and managing risk, which often means making sure we're taking appropriate risks because avoiding all risk is actually risky. And then we have outcomes around ensuring that we have enough revenue coming in and outcomes around ensuring that our programs are making the biggest impact possible and connected to our mission. Okay, I could do the whole workshop on this, but that was like super high level. Once you have your outcomes mapped out, then what you can do is assign people to be accountable for achieving those outcomes. And this brings me to my third category of tips for you today, which is when we think of our team, we have our heads and our hands. So and everybody can have a head and a hand, right? So, but those people who are accountable for an outcome, they need to be ready to accept what I like to call this heads role. And not everybody's up for being a head because it means that you have to be accountable, responsible for things that are not directly in your control, right? So like, whether or not a donor gives is not directly in your control. We're not like reaching into their pockets and stealing their money. We have to do a lot of things to try to get them to give us their money. So, right. So being ahead means we are thinking about and we are making the decisions about what activities in general we're going to do, what tactics are going to get us the outcomes that we need. And we're making decisions around breaking a big outcome into smaller outcomes, right? So a big outcome, we need more donor revenue. smaller outcomes, we're going to focus on bringing in new donors, or we're going to focus on bringing in new major donors, or we're going to focus on increasing donations from our existing donors, right? So there's some sub outcomes, and a heads person is going to be a good strategic thinker, breaking those down, and is going to feel comfortable enough with risk that they're comfortable owning things they don't have direct control over. Hands roles are about getting the work done, and their job is to be accountable for following the processes and getting things done, right? That usually the heads roles are deciding. Now, so I could be a heads role in one area and a hands role in another area. So let's say I'm an executive director. So I might have a heads role in deciding the right direction for the organization, figuring out what that is, making sure I'm always like 20 steps ahead of where we are today. And then I might be a hands role in major donor gifts, right? So somebody else who's deciding where we focus might say, hey, Sarah, we need you to, have lunch or make calls to, these specific lists of donors. And I'll say, great, I can do that. And this amazing thing happens, though. We have to remember, if you're both a heads role and a hands role and you're deciding what to do in your day, you must always prioritize your heads role, which sometimes means going back to somebody and saying, I can't help you. I can't do the hands role for that because I'm too busy in my heads role right now. And for the most part, jobs will sort themselves out if you do that. But what that also can reveal when all of a sudden a number of the heads start going, hey, I don't have enough hands to get this work done. Now you know it is time to staff up. Okay, I have fire hosed you like crazy with information. If you'd like to dive into any one of these topics more deeply, let me know. I'd be happy to do a one-off short training on any of those. Some of them I have additional resources for, and all of them are part of the impact method that I teach my one-on-one clients and my clients in the Thrive program, which you can learn more about and see if you're a good fit for, starting with an application at pivotground.com/application. I review those manually. We'll schedule a call, talk through your issues, and see if or what the best fit might be for you. It's always a pleasure to be here with you. Until next time.